Hi everyone, welcome once again to the ESCOM encouragement series. Today I will share with you two verses. One is from Romans chapter 5, verse 4, verse 3 to verse 5. And the other one is James chapter 1. I'll read the Romans 1 first, okay? It says here in Romans chapter 5, verse 3, it says, "Not only that, but we rejoice in our suffering, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. And hope does not put us to shame, because God's love has been poured out into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us." And the other Bible verse is James chapter 1, which a lot of people are also familiar with. It says here, count it all, chapter 1, verse 2, "Count it all joy, my brother, when you meet trials of various kind, for you know the testing of your faith produces steadfastness, and the steadfastness have its full effect, and let steadfastness have its full effect, and that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing." I brought these two verses up because I had the hardest time with this notion of rejoicing and being joyful when going through suffering or trials. It has been one of the most difficult things that I have. Initially, I thought it was just one verse and it was a mistake. How can one rejoice when one goes through suffering? So if we look at James chapter 2, chapter 1, verse 2, it says, "Count it all joy, my brother. Count it joy when you meet trials." So he's telling us to count or consider it as joy. It didn't say here that when you go through trials of various kind, it is a joyful thing. You count it as a joyful thing. We have, a lot of people have pets. Pets like dogs or cats. Dogs or cats are just dogs or cats. Some people consider dogs and cats as pet. Some of them consider them as family members. It's not dogs and cats that make the difference, is how we look at them that makes the difference. So some people say dogs and cats are family members, so they count cats and dogs as family members, or you count cats and dogs as pet. So the same thing here, James is saying that we can count as joy. Joy, going through suffering, is not happy time. It's not time where we shout out with joy. It's how we look at it. We can look at it as a joyful thing, or we can look at it as a terrible thing. So that's the first thing I learned from this verse, is that it's how we look at suffering. Suffering and trials is the way we look at it, okay? And Romans is very clear. Romans actually tells us much more clearly what do we get out of suffering. He says here very clearly, when we go through suffering, we rejoice in our suffering, because suffering produces endurance. Endurance produces character, and character produces hope. So here we know that when we suffer, we will learn to have endurance, have patience, and patience will build our character. And character will bring us hope. So why is character so important? We know that from the story in the Bible and from what Jesus said, we know that when we pass away from this earth, when we go into heaven, we will, each of us, keep our own character and our own personality. We know that in the story of Lazarus and the rich man, when they died, they went to heaven. We can recognize Lazarus as Lazarus and the rich man as a rich man. We do not lose all our personality and characteristic. I remember I had a friend in med school. He's Hindu. So he goes to me one day, he goes, your religion and my religion are exactly the same. I said, how so? He goes, when in Hinduism, when you die, you become part of God. You achieve nirvana and you become part of Brahma. So that means that you become part of God and you disappear and merge with God and you become God. And you're merged with God with no characteristic. You take the characteristic of the God. That's what he believes in. He said, well, you guys in Christianity also believe the same thing. When you die, you go to heaven. That's exactly the same thing. At that time, I didn't know how to answer him. Because, never thought about that. But now when I think about it, I realize that when we go to heaven, each of us will keep our characteristics. We'll keep ourselves. And that is very important, because here it says is when you suffer, you build your character. The only thing that we take when we live on this earth, when we leave this earth, we can't take anything with us. We know that. We can't take our car, cannot take our house, can't take our degree, cannot even take our family members. The only thing we take with us when we leave this earth and go to heaven is who we are. And it says here, when we suffer, when we go through trials and tribulation, we build our character. And that's the character that we take with us when we go to heaven. Nothing else. Can't take anything else with us. I remember when I left India to come to Canada, the toughest thing to do is to figure out what to bring with us to Canada. It was tough. There's lots of things I want to bring to Canada. I like this, I like that. After a while, you start thinking, okay, do they have this in Canada? If they have it, don't bring it. If they don't have it, maybe you should bring it. So we went through the whole thing. Two things I think I brought that I thought was important. One was all the pictures that we took, all the photographs. I thought, oh, well, this should last forever. This is important. I should bring it to Canada. Now nobody uses photograph anymore. The second thing I brought was my favorite Nike shoe that I paid 300 rupee for it. But when I brought it here, I realized it was actually a pretty cheap model. So the two things I thought was important that I brought with me was not that important after all. So same thing with us going to heaven. The most important thing we bring with us is character. And that is why suffering, we can rejoice. We can consider it. We can consider that when we go through tough times, Romans is very clear. When we go through tough times, we will build perseverance. And when we have endurance or perseverance, we will develop our character. And that's one thing we'll take with us to heaven. And because of that, we can look back at all our suffering and rejoice, because we are made to be more like Christ with each suffering that we go through. I know people will say, well, look, I still don't like suffering. I know I don't like suffering either. But with this understanding, I hope it helps us a little bit when we go through suffering. That's what I have to share today. Thank you.